Ever wondered what lurks in the shadows when the rest of the world is asleep? Night shift workers often see things the sun never touches. Prepare yourself for a collection of chilling, true encounters from those who work in the dead of night, guaranteed to make you question every bump in the dark. The security guard. When you work as a night guard, you learn quickly that your biggest enemy isn't crime, it's silence. Most nights, the building is dead quiet. The fluorescent lights hum, the air vents sigh every so often, and you sit staring at the same empty corridors on the monitors for hours. I'd been doing it long enough to know when something wasn't right, and it started small. The first time I noticed it, I was walking my rounds and saw a chair in the lobby pulled slightly away from the desk. Just a few inches. I brushed it off. Maybe I'd bumped it earlier without realizing. The next night, one of the office doors was ajar. Not wide, just enough for the latch to rest against the frame without clicking shut. I remembered closing it. I always closed it. I told myself it was nothing. Buildings settle, drafts move things. But deep down, I knew it felt deliberate. Still, I tried to ignore it. Until the elevator. I was sitting at the desk, half watching the monitors, when the elevator doors slid open on the third floor. Empty. That floor should have been locked down for renovations. No one had access. No one had reason to be there. I switched to the hallway camera, and my blood ran cold. The lights were turning on, one by one, down the hall, as if someone invisible was walking toward the camera. I stared at the feed, my hands frozen over the controls, and then it stopped. I ran upstairs, heart pounding in my throat, my flashlight cutting through the shadows. The corridor was silent. All the doors closed, all the offices locked, not a single sign of anyone there. Back at my desk, I rewound the footage. And that's when things truly spiraled. The elevator had opened again, this time on the first floor, then the second, then the fourth, always empty. And then the cameras started to glitch, not one, not two. Every single feed scrambled at once. Static filled the monitors, and when the image returned, I felt my stomach twist into ice. Every camera showed the same thing. Not the halls, not the offices, but me, sitting at my desk. I couldn't breathe. I sat frozen in the chair, staring at myself, staring back on a dozen screens. And then, for just a second, I saw it. Behind me, a figure, just a shadow, tall and thin, standing in the corner of the screen. I whipped around so fast, I nearly fell out of my chair. The corner was empty. When I looked back at the monitors, everything was normal again. The cameras showed what they always did. Empty halls, locked doors, dead silence. But from that night on, I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time I looked at those screens, I wondered, am I watching the building? Or is something in the building watching me? The nurse hospitals at night are different. In the daytime, there's constant noise, machines beeping, phones ringing, staff rushing, voices everywhere. But at night, it all dies down. The halls stretch on like empty tunnels. The lights are dimmed and every sound echoes far too loudly. That night, the ward was quiet. Too quiet. Only a few patients sleeping, the soft hiss of oxygen and the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors. I was at the desk, finishing up charting, when I noticed her. At the very end of the corridor, she was barefoot, dressed in a pale hospital gown. Her skin looked ashen, her hair dripping wet, strands plastered against her face. I didn't recognize her, and I know all the patients. I stood up, called down the hall, "Mom, are you all right?" She didn't move, didn't answer. Instead, She turned, slowly, her movements stiff, deliberate, and she slipped into room 12. My stomach sank, because room 12 had been empty for weeks. I grabbed a flashlight and hurried down the hall, shoes squeaking against the linoleum. The sound seemed too loud, bouncing off the walls as if I wasn't alone. I pushed the door open, dark, silent. The bed was neatly made, the air heavy with disinfectant. No one there. I stepped inside, shining my light over every corner. My pulse was hammering in my ears, and then the call button on the wall lit up, the patient call. I froze. The intercom above the bed crackled, static filling the room like a hiss of breath, and then a voice whispered through. Not faint, not distorted, clear. "Don't let him in." The flashlight slipped in my hand. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bed. The light went dead. I bolted out into the hallway, shaking. Another nurse caught me halfway down the corridor, demanding to know what happened. We checked the room together. The button was dark, the intercom silent. She looked at me like I was losing it, told me I needed sleep, but I couldn't let it go. Later that night, I pulled up the patient logs. Room 12 hadn't just been empty. It had a history. The last occupant was a man. His chart was short. Cause of death, respiratory failure. Final note, do not resuscitate. And I'll never forget what one of the older nurses said when I asked. That patient had spent his final hours screaming about a figure standing in the corner of the room. A figure no one else could see. The truck driver. Driving trucks at night is a lonely job. The highways stretch on forever, black and empty. Your world shrinks down to the hum of the engine and the slice of your headlights cutting through the dark. I was deep in the mountains, hours from the nearest town when I saw it. At first, just a shape at the side of the road. I thought it was a hitchhiker, common enough. I slowed down, leaned forward over the wheel. But as I got closer, I realized they weren't moving, not waving, not shifting their weight, just standing there, facing away from the road. I tapped the brakes, headlights bathing the figure in white, and that's when it turned. Not its body, just its head, twisting too far, too fast, catching the light, its eyes shining blank and hollow. My whole body went cold. I gripped the wheel, stomped the gas, roared past. I told myself I was overtired, seeing things, shadows playing tricks. But then I checked the mirror. The figure wasn't at the roadside anymore. It was standing in the center of the lane. And then it dropped, onto all fours. I'll never forget the sound in my head, like bones snapping. The way its limbs bent the wrong way, elbows and knees twisting backwards. And then it started moving, not crawling, not walking, running, on all fours. I slammed my foot down, my truck rattling as it surged forward. The mirror shook, the headlights behind me bouncing. But it was keeping up. I watched it in the mirror, its face catching the light, its jaw slack, its mouth hanging open like it was laughing silently. I didn't breathe until the road curved and I lost sight of it. But even then, I didn't stop. Not until sunrise. And I never checked the back of the trailer, because deep down, I wasn't sure if it had stayed behind or if it had climbed inside. The night has always been fertile ground for the strange. Empty halls, deserted wards, endless highways, the perfect places for fear to take shape. But sometimes it's not imagination. Sometimes it's something else. What about you? Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Share your story in the comments. Maybe it'll appear in a future episode. Thanks for staying with me tonight. If you enjoyed these stories, like, and subscribe. More nightmares are coming.